my biggest thing out of everything is don't lose hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was so many times so discouraged, and so wanting to just throw in the towel.
Yeah.
And the enemy will tell you that.
Yeah. Throw it in. It's not
just
worth it.
Just throw it in, get ready, just end it. But no, God's got a better plan, and just don't ever think there's no hope.
Hey y'all, I'm your host, Brooke Pinchin. Welcome to God's Coffee Call, a place where there's always a fresh brewed conversation happening of personal testimony and life experiences. So grab a cup of coffee, pull a chair to the table, and join our conversation. Yeah, to say the least.
And so we pack up and we move, and we come back. Well, at that point, his grandmother, her house had become open, and was vacant. And so the uncle, said, yeah, yes. He knew me and the kids, and the day he said, no, y'all go ahead and move in there. So we moved in the grandmother's house. Okay. And we're all good there and, back and forth, but to church. And, at this point, we've moved to a church in Amite. And their dad would go sometimes with me, sometimes he wouldn't, but it was mainly me and the kids, would go. So that was always my foundation.
Right.
And God placed me in positions as far as work, because like I said, Dad was off and on working, so I was working. I would start my morning at the daycare, where, of course, my kids weren't in school yet, so they were at the daycare. Well, at this point, I think Jeremy was the only one in daycare. The other two had started, the daycare was the daycare was a school, preschool as well. And so, but I worked there. So I didn't have to pay.
Yeah.
So that was God. That was God.
Yeah.
I would work there till lunch. And then I would go to a little grocery store. The sweet, sweet family in Tangipahoa had a little small grocery store. And I'd go to work there at the grocery store. And this was God too. At that point, I didn't, as you look back now, you see it.
Right.
Because Miss Margaret, the lady who owned the grocery store, her and her husband, she was very frugal. She did not waste anything. If meat was in the meat counter and it was getting to where it was needing to be sold or whatever, she'd put it in the freezer. So it was still good till,
Right.
And some people would buy it out of there, but ever so often she would go and empty that freezer and send it home. Say, here, Johnette, take this.
Wow.
I knew what was coming on sale the week next, following week. So I could kind of program things. So God he stretched what little bit I made.
Yeah.
So my kids were fed.
Small little moments, little miracles along the way.
Those little nuggets. So not, like I said, at that point, I was just surviving, but it was God.
Yeah.
When I look back, it was God taking care. And fast forward, we're in this house and the kids, I think we might have been there right at a year or so. But the kids are fixing to start school, and because the school year is coming up, and they're enrolled. They're going to go to school. And I don't know if we were gone to church or where we had gone somewhere, but we came home and there was this envelope on the door. And of course, I'm at the door first, and I get it, and I open it, and it's a letter stating how they've been patient and kind, and but there's other cousins that could benefit as well, and it's not fair that we're not paying rent. And I thought, oh, what? Here we go again. And basically, it was an eviction notice that the uncle had wrote. And the aunt, because it was just the two siblings. At this point, the kids' she had passed, so it was just the two siblings. And it was an eviction notice. And oh, God. So when their dad came up, I said, look, and he reads it. And I'm in shock. I'm getting the kids in, getting them ready for bed, and just not knowing, well, what am I going to do? You know, school starts in a week.
Yeah.
I mean, am I going to be here? Do I need to enroll them in a different school?
Right.
How do I move? What do, you know, all this.
Mom stuff.
That's mom stuff.
Figuring
mom
it
stuff.
out. Yeah.
And so anyway, I remember sitting on the couch. The kids were in their room playing. I'm going, what do I do? You know, and their dad came in and he sat down beside me. And I look at him. I said, what are we going to do? And if my children watch this, Jeremy knows this because I told him just a couple weeks ago. But I don't know that my other children know this. But surprise, because I was just not a parent that ever down talked their dad because it would only hurt them.
Right.
I hate it when parents do that when they divorce. But anyway, when he sat down beside me and I'm asking, what are we going to do? And he looked at me and he said, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't want to. I don't want to be a husband. I don't want to be a dad. I don't want to be a provider. I'm leaving and going north.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That was kind of my...
like crickets, like, come again for me?
And he got up. And now, mind you, we were back of the marriage was rocky anyway, okay? But I wasn't going to leave. That was my life.
Right.
And he got up and he went in the bedroom. He got a bag of clothes and he walked out the door. In honesty, I sat there and I thought, okay, 8 years at that point. And I thought, I don't know if I need to cry, shout hallelujah, the ball and chain is finally cut.
Right.
Or I didn't know how to act. Then I felt guilty because I'm like, oh my God, you know. And that was it. He left. Yeah. So
how do you process that?
At this point, I'm sitting there going, but I still have to move and I still have 3 kids and I still have to, he might be gone, but I'm still thinking, okay, well now I got to do all this on my own, but I still got to do this. So I remember going to the phone and I called the uncle and I said, I have to tell you. And his Johnette, I hated to write that letter. I'm so sorry. You know, I know it's nothing against you and the children. I said, no, I know that. I said, but what I'm calling about, I said, he just left and he's gone. And I told him what was said. Mm-hmm. I said, and I will, as soon as I can, I'm going to start finding a place. And as soon as I can get out of here, I will. But I may need a little more time. Mm-hmm. And it was a dead silent. I thought, oh. He said, he's gone. Just like that. I remember him saying that, he's gone. And I'm like, yeah. He said, Johnette, as long as he is gone and not in that house, you and those children stay there as long as you need. And I said, well, I promise you it won't be long. He said, no. This was trying to get him to step up. So his family even saw, trying to get him to step up, trying to get him, you know. But again, we were kids, you know.
Right.
And so, or I say we were kids.
He's
we
like,
were.
I just went on a date to give my cousin a favor, right?
Yeah. But you see the roller coaster.
Right.
And so anyway, it wasn't long. I did move and, you know, found a place and, you know, and moved back to Amite because we were closer to Kentwood at that point, you know. So it was,
Wow. I don't even know what to say to that because it's a guy that you didn't really want to marry in the first place, right? And you just sucked it up and did it, right?
Yeah.
We've got kids now. Mm-hmm. We're trying to make it work. And he's like, deuces, peace out, I'm out of here. But the Lord gives you this place to stay and provides for that. So how do we pick up from here and move into that next phase of being a single mom and or whatever is next? What is that?
Well, the single mom, I really didn't realize it, but I was that the whole time. Really.
Right.
I remember someone asking me, how do don't you miss having a companion? Don't you miss? I said, I never had it. So how can you miss something you never had?
Right.
But again, being in church, I just dove in even more deeper. We moved to a meet, the church we were going to. I just continued to go.
Right.
And that was my lifeblood.
Okay.
Didn't have a vehicle. Of course, at this point, like no vehicle, no job. I mean, I had quit everything because, the Lord had told me,
Right.
you stop everything because he's got to step up to
Right.
plate. And I'm like, oh Lord. So I did.
Yeah.
And, but it didn't, it
Right.
didn't pan out.
Yeah.
But so we move, and I'm like, Lord, you really got your work cut out for you here because I don't have a job. I don't have a way to go. I end up finding, and my mom, I relied on my family a lot,
Right.
At that point, but it was more of a not realizing it. I still wasn't living me. I was living what they were,
Right.
thought best.
Your dad was still alive, or was just your mom now?
He was still alive. They were at their point rocky themselves.
Right.
And so I remember I don't remember if they were married 27 years or it had to be more than that. How many years they were married? They end up divorcing.
Okay.
And so, which wasn't a good thing, a pretty thing at that point. But yes, they end up divorcing after we're all out. We all have our own families, our children, then they divorce.
Got you. Okay.
But yeah, so all that's going through that. My older sister's going through a divorce herself. It was
Just
just
another series of
lots
events.
Stuff going on.
Got you. Okay.
But I did stay plugged in to church.
Good. Yeah.
I connected with, and actually it was a small little church. I kind of cut off everybody just to be okay, God, it's me and you. And I remember we had guest speaker would come in and they were talking about what the husband was to do, what the man's to do, the man to do. And I remember sitting in that church and I'm going, God, I don't have one of those.
Right.
I need to know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And he gently but loudly told me, but you need to know what to expect. You need to know what I, have for a husband for you. And and I thought, oh, okay. So I took my notes and, just stayed diligent.
Wait,
But,
I want to talk about that. Talk about that because I was at a Bible study last night with some ladies, and I've actually we did a podcast with another girl, Chelsea, and that we talked about that of how before I got married, the Lord said, "Hey, I want to walk you through what it means to be a priest, protector, and a provider, so you would know what to expect in your husband." And so, kind of tell me, if you can, a little bit of what was that season like? What was the Lord speaking to you in that season?
even though I was having to be mom, dad, provide everything, I still didn't, and things were not pretty. I remember saying, God, don't let my heart get hard.
Yeah.
And so, and then in hearing, the man is the provider and the man, guides the house, leads the household and gets to church and, all the leader of the home, the wife. It was not so much because, again, back to my bringing up, the wife was to be submissive. Mm-hmm. Well, religion defines that a whole different way than what God defines that.
Right.
And so it was, that part was hard for me because I had to relearn a lot. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, I still didn't listen to him.
We're typically good at that.
Even though I had notes and,
right.
But God, just that where the situation I was in, he let me know was not going to be a permanent.
Yeah.
That he was preparing me because he had to, not that I had to be fixed,
right?
But my heart and my position on life and marriage and relationship, I had to be, there was a lot of hurt.
Right.
A lot of doubt, mistrust. I mean, all of it,
Yeah.
And so I remember telling my poor husband I'm married to right now, I didn't trust a man as far as I could throw him.
Yeah.
Because
but
I had
rightly
been
so,
soured
right,
on,
yeah.
And so that wasn't fair to him, but, I'm like, But that was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Was just me working through that and accepting, okay, God, well, is there any of them like that out there?
Right.
So it's a few years, I want to say maybe 2 years that, and we don't hear anything from their dad. The kids write letters, hey, they were in baseball, little league.
Right.
Life was going on.
Right.
Normal.
We were living life. Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying,
Right.
And I didn't do it right. I made horrible choices, at times. But I do know that, like, the boys would write a letter. Hey, Dad, I hit a home run, or hey, Dad, I caught the football, or hey, Dad,
Right.
and oh, Mom, can you mail this? Well, yeah, not wanting to hurt them. And I'm
Right.
thinking, I don't know where
I
he's at.
don't know where to mail it.
I don't know where he's at, because we didn't. I literally did not know where he
Right.
was at. But in that time, God was still taking care, because back then you had to be legally separated 6 months on paper before you could file for a divorce. Well, that takes an attorney fee, and that takes this. And my family was like, "You need to get divorced. You need to get away from him." I'm like, guys, if I had money,
You need to give me some money.
that's a gallon of milk. That's a pair of shoes.
Right.
That's how my mind thinking was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's gone. It doesn't matter. He's not bothering us. I don't know. We just got to live life. But God, the little church I was in, and now mind you, my jobs were multiple jobs. One of them was house cleaning. The little church I was in, there was a lawyer there. And she and I really connected, and she kind of knew my situation, but she said, hey, I'm going to get you that legal separation you need. She said, and that way we can set a child support amount. And I thought, what is that?
Yeah.
But whatever, and at that point I'm like, it's not something I ever got. So, I didn't. But anyway, she said, but I'm going to do that. And I said, well, I can't pay you. She said, I live with my mom and dad, and they're elderly. How about you clean my house or clean the house? So that was God.
Come on.
That was God. And so just remember that little thought. She's got me done there.
Gotcha.
Not that I started receiving child support or anything, but just that's a key, because that was God there.
Yeah.
And so we're rocking on. I end up, and it was in 88. I'm still in A-Meet, and I get an opportunity to come to Kentwood milking cows. Now, see, whatever it took.
Right. Whatever.
I flip hamburgers, clean houses,
Yeah.
milk cows, work daycare, work grocery store, do them all at one time, whatever. Because I was providing, but that was God. Always put me in positions where it wasn't an 8 to 5 that I had to pay daycare.
Yeah.
It always worked around my children's schedule. Right. That was God.
It reminds me of that verse in the Bible when it talks about consider the birds of the air, how he provides, and it's that small things.
I lived on that.
And to listen, we have lived through that, and it was so hard until I understood that man, God, to the point that you care for the birds, how much more do you care for me, and how much more are you going to provide for me? And I'm going to do what I can do, but the places that I can't make up, you're going to have to fill in those gaps. And he would just be faithful and do that.
I remember being in church one day, and I had just very little. What was the woman with the alabaster box? She had very little. But what I had, I thought, I wanted to give. My heart wanted to give a lot more.
Right.
And I looked in my purse, and these are thoughts in my head. No one's knowing, And I said, well, good. I got $1. That's good. And I said, but you know what? that won't buy a gallon of milk. That won't buy much gas.
Right.
I'm just going to, God, I'm going out on faith, and I'm just going to give it to you.
Yeah.
I'll give it to you. You've met my needs and done everything so far. And so with no expectations, I just put it in that offering. And do you know, before I got home from church, a complete stranger was at church, came and brought something to my father, by the way. Let me back up. He was coming to the same church with me. Not with me, but he was there too.
Yeah, right.
Because they gave it to him.
Okay.
And they said, Lord told me give this to your daughter. Can you give it to him?
Yeah.
And I remember him coming over and he gave me, it was a $100 bill. And immediately I'm like, you can't outgive God.
Yeah.
He gives back. Well, the scripture gives back 100-fold.
Right.
He literally does. All I had was $1. Now it's 100. I mean,
it really works. It's really true.
These are the realities.
Right, yeah.
I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah, giving back, that was a definite, the Lord giving back 100-fold.
Gotcha.
Which just was confirmation for me that God did see me.
Yeah.
And he did know. He did hear.
Yeah.
You know? And
so this lawyer lady's helped you. She's starting this process?
Yes, nope, we've got that already done.
Okay.
I'm going to move to Kentwood. And, of course, like I said, I'm milking cows, which was a blessing because I was off when the kids were off.
Right.
You know, I was home. They could do homework even though they sat in the barn and did it. You know,
Yeah.
It provided a house. There was a house that came with it, so I didn't have to pay rent.
Awesome.
I mean, God just literally.
All the little things.
Yeah. And I was on here, right across the interstate from where we're at right now, which right there by my sister, you know, right by family.
Right.
And so it was just a good, you know, even though it was a bad situation, it was good.
Yeah.
You know. And then fast forward, we've got, because I have, I'm still legally separated. I hadn't been divorced. I'm just legally separated. The boys are playing baseball. And one of the coaches becomes interested in me. Now, mind you, I'm not, they have to tell me because I'm not looking. I'm busy. I got my hands full. That's a last
milking cows
thing.
and raising kids.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm just going on. That's
Right.
my life. And actually, I remember my sister saying, hey, this guy's really interested in you. You know, different ones. He could help, you know, it'd be really helpful as far as financial, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I thought, okay, well, let me just see, you know, who is this? And fast forward, we end up getting married.
Okay.
And about a year or two into the marriage, it becomes a physical abuse.
Wow.
And so, thank goodness, my sons weren't home because they probably would have been in jail or it wouldn't have been, you know.
Right, Lisa.
But, and I remember the poor guy, I remember him saying, man, you just bounce right back. You won't stay down.
Wow.
And I remember standing up to him and I said, my father never hit me like this and I'm sure not going to let you, you know. So I thought, now what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah.
You know. And still I thought, okay, I can make this work. Here I am. I don't believe in divorce. And I'm not going to, you know, I've already got one under my belt. Lord, what have I done? You know. And at this point, he didn't go to church, so we were veered out. But I was hit or miss at the local church here in town, which it was just checking a box.
Right.
You know, I was just checking a box. Hungry and all, but just checking the box, you know, just existing. And I remember getting a phone call from a state trooper. I just sent my children to school, and it was a better life. They were in a private school. You know, they had anything they needed. It was a big cost for me. But, you know, I thought, oh, well, I've decided
Was it just that one time he was physical, or it was
at this point? It was just a one time.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Which was more than one time too many, but for anybody. You know, anyway, I got a call from a state trooper. And he's asking me were my children, He says, where are they? And I'm panicking, going, what do you mean where? He's asking about my name and all this.
I dropped
and
them
I
at
said,
school.
they're at school where they're supposed to be.
Right.
He said, well, you will need to go get them. I said, why? And he said, their father has been in a very serious accident. They don't know if he's going to live. They are air medding him to the hospital, and you need to get your children there. I'm like, sir, we've not heard from this man. At this point, it might have been 4 years.
So this is their real father.
Their real father.
Okay, got you.
And
okay.
I'm like, the one that went north.
Yeah.
And one that, and I'm like, you've got to fill me in a little more. He had been in Kentwood the whole time.
Oh, just 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
There were, and I remember the accident happening. Didn't realize it was him.
Right.
I had heard about it, and then I get this call not about an hour later. There were 2 18-wheelers hauling chips coming one way, and 2 18-wheelers hauling logs coming another way. Wow. And one 18-wheeler decides to pass another, and there's somehow about a little old lady in a car between them in a bridge. And the one's going, don't come around. And he says, I'm coming around. Now on the radio, I'm assuming. Don't come around. It's not going to be good. Well, he did. Whoever, I don't know which driver.
Right.
But they ended up, of course, colliding. Wow. And their dad this is their biological father. I was told he had 7 open fractures.
Wow.
And so, he tells me where he's at. And I said, okay. So I go and get my kids. And the whole time I'm thinking, because you got to back up. My family had said, take him to court, take him to court, take him to court. And I'm like, no. And I remember that little vengeance is mine, says the Lord. I'm thinking, God's going to take care of this. I can't, I'm going to focus on me, him, and the kids. I can't focus on their, God's will take care of this.
Gotcha.
So I'm telling myself this all this time, these years. Well, then when this happened, I remember going to pick up my kids, and I'm praying for the man. I didn't want the man, bad for him, even though, and I'm like, God, I want you to try to kill him.
Yeah. Right. It's like,
Lord. And so I'm praying for this man as I'm going to get the kids, and we get to the hospital. And as I get there and I'm in the hallway, his sister and dad are in the hallway, their grandfather and aunt. And they say, we're going to keep the kids out here. We want you to go in first, prepare yourself so you can be there for the kids. I'm like, okay.
All right.
And when I walked in that room, I'm going to tell you what, there was more pipes and wires and cables and brackets. And he had arms and legs and every which way and neck thing. I thought, oh, Jesus. Once I got through all that, I could see him. And when I walked up, of course, he couldn't move.
Right.
And I walked up to where he could see me.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't say anything. And I'm just looking at him, and I see a tear start to roll down his eye. And he looks at me, and he said, his eyes, moves his eyes only. He said, I am sorry for everything I ever did to you and the kids. To which I looked at him, and I said, I forgave you a long time ago. And I knew at that point I really had.
Right.
And so anyway, long story short, he gets out, but I thought, oh my God, Lord. But the Lord told me at that point in that room, before I let my kids come in there to see their dad, the Lord told me, he said, this man will walk with a limp for the rest of his life as a remembrance. And I thought, oh, wow. Lord. And then again, thinking the scriptures, vengeance is mine. Lord, your wrath is a lot worse than anybody.
Right.
And I'm thinking, Lord, I didn't. So I knew he wasn't going to die.
Right.
But I like, Lord. And so I'm just still praying for the man. And even now, still praying, even to,
who was it in the Bible that said that he had a thorn in his flesh? No, Jacob wrestled with God, with the angel, and he walked with the limp for the rest of his days. Like, when you encounter God and you have that moment with God, and maybe not in the right way sometimes, or the Lord bringing justice, you walk with the limp in remembrance. And so that's wow.
It was, that was a wow.
Yeah.
And so fast forward 6 months, maybe, I don't even know, maybe longer, I get another phone call and I'm still married in this relationship, the abusive one. And it's a lot encountered there because this man had 2 sons that were almost the exact same age as my 2 boys. I think the youngest might have been a little bit younger than Jeremy, but they were close. But we only had one that lived with us, and he got into drugs. Cleaning the house, I found drugs in the back room, in his room, and I tell the dad, and the dad says, "Oh, there's too many kids in this house that planted it. That's not him." So then I've got this. I've got a double standard life,
Right.
And so my boys are working after school job, and then they come in at night and they get to bed, and then they wake up next morning. The money they got paid is gone because it was a lot of stealing and just stuff, and so I'm dealing with that. Well, I get this call, and this is an attorney, and he identified himself, and he represented the kid's daddy. He said, "I am fully aware of the child support rears." He said, "And once the lawsuit is settled, you will get, those rears paid." I'm like, okay. I had no idea how much it was. I had never gotten child support,
right?
And I thought,
okay.
okay, whatever.
Okay. We'll see it when it gets here,
we'll
right?
See. I'm thinking this is a prank call. Well, when I hung up the phone, I remember my husband at that point asking me, "What was that? Who was that?" And I told him, I said, "Well, something about this." And he said, "Oh, great. When we get that check," and he was a gambler. He did all this betting and stuff, which was, again, not my lifestyle.
Right.
So he said, "We're going to pay off his debts that were prior to me." I thought, no, this is my kids' money. It's not mine. I don't even want it. If I get anything, it's for the kids.
Yeah.
Which brought on another beating. And so I remember staying. It wasn't long because I'm thinking, I can't live this double standard life.
Yeah.
And really my thoughts were this one child who I really tried to reach. I remember thinking, okay, he goes out and gets drugs and he owes these people, the dealers. This is my thinking, okay? He owes them money and they're going to try to come collect and could possibly come in here and just do a shooting. My children are going to suffer over this.
Right.
And so this, I'm going through my head of a double standard life. And, and then my husband at that point said, "Oh, you'll never leave me. You'll never leave me and my money." I thought, my children's life is so much
more than your money, right?
Than this. And I'm like, I'm gone. I'm out of here. And so after a few more times of the abuse, my kids at this point, so they were mainly staying with a lot of their friends because they didn't even want to be.
Just to be out of the house.
Yes, just to be out of the house. And so, which I hated, but I knew God was protecting, So I decided, I talked to my sister, had a downstairs apartment. It was just a one room with a little stove. Not stove. It was a sink, refrigerator. It was connected to her house. So we were all right there. And she said, "Just come stay here. Bring the kids, bring what little you had." And I literally left with what I had. I didn't take any extra. I just wanted out of that bad situation. Right. Again, now I'm defeating myself because I'm like, oh my God, here I'm looking at, I done goofed up again.
We got to start all over again. Yeah.
What's wrong with me, God? And so, I end up in a second divorce. And, but God, He knew back when the lawyer, said, "Let's get this set up for you." That was a savings account for me. That was God putting money up. Because a week after I left, I got a check. Wow. I looked at that and I'm thinking, at first I was like, what is this? Because I didn't.
Yeah.
I I didn't know the lawyer, didn't know that. And I remember calling them and they said, no, ma'am, we got our settlement and that is what was owed. And I thought,
Awesome.
wow. So that money, I immediately went and found it was a used trailer, but it didn't matter.
Yeah.
I paid cash for it because I had it. My sister said at that point, she said, look, just put it down at the bottom of the hill, back by their barn. You'll be on your own, Well, I remember they had a well back there. So I remember took that money. It bought a trailer. It paid for the piping to go from the well to the house.
Yeah.
It put down the septic. At that point, you had all that field bed and stuff, It paid for all that. It got the electricity hooked up. It was just everything. And at that point, Kelly was a senior in high school. It helped with her senior stuff.
Wow.
Okay. So here I am again. Going through another. I did not file for divorce. Actually, he did because he was afraid I was going to take stuff.
Got you.
Well, I was smart enough. I didn't put the trailer I bought in my name because I thought I'm still married and I don't,
Right.
This is my children's, And so I think I put in my sister's name.
Got you.
Because she was right there helping
being
me.
Smart.
Yeah, I was trying to protect my kids.
Right.
But anyway, but in my life wise, I was hit or miss in church. Really burnt, really another mess up, another rejection, another, more drama. And in the midst of that, I feel like I lost my kids. Because it's like, golly, here they are grown and, Kelly, a senior, and she ended up going to college, going to get married. So now I have a wedding. I'm going to do, I had a whole year did everything myself. So I could pay for it. God provided, he took care. But in the midst of that, Ricky, in her first year of college, Ricky is a senior. Remember, they're close. He's a senior now. Well, he joins the Army National Guard. So he's heading off to boot camp.
All this change happening.
All within Kelly gets married and boom, he's gone.
Yeah.
Type thing, and Jeremy stayed with his dad a little while, but then he's back. Well, he wants, I remember him, he's in the 11th grade and he says, Mom, I've got someone coming to meet you because I really want to do this. I said, son, what? Well, it's a recruiter.
Do what? Oh, gosh.
And I remember that man coming in saying, your son scored high on the ASVAB, which I was clueless of all that stuff.
Right.
He scored high on the ASVAB test. He can go in anything but nuclear because he doesn't have a high school diploma yet. And I said, no, he doesn't.
He doesn't.
He's
You're
11th
right.
grade.
We're going to. He's 16, right?
Yeah,
15, 16.
No. But Jeremy really wanted to do it. He said, Mom, I really want to do this though. And he said, and the recruiter said, I promise you, ma'am. I had to sign. That's why they had to come to me because I had to sign and say, yeah, you can have my kid. I thought, But I talked to Jeremy. I prayed about it. And Jeremy really wanted to do this. I don't want you to do,
Yeah.
And the recruiter said, I promise you, ma'am, if he goes, he will get his high school diploma while he's in boot camp. And he's, Mom, I really want to go. So long story short, he did it. 20 years later, he's retired. It was the best thing
decision
for him.
Yeah.
It was the hardest thing for me.
Well, yeah.
Because now I've got a daughter married. My kids were gone.
Yeah.
Well, in the midst of that, I'm at the point of, Lord, I'm never getting married again. If you have someone for me, then you're going to have to bring him to my doorsteps because I'm not looking.
Right. That's what Mom said. You're going to put him on my front porch because I'm done.
It will be me and you till death do me and you part. Which will be never to be eternity. Right. So in the midst of that, Dara, my sister, and her husband, and different ones, it must have been about a group of 15, would always like to go and eat dinner or something. Well, they'd come join us, Johnette. Come join. I thought, no, I'm a third wheel. Doesn't matter. So they were trying to keep me still doing, instead of just sitting at home. And Richard and I, our paths crossed. Well, he was actually dating someone at that point from my look of view, okay?
Right.
I didn't know his view. From what I see, he had someone with him
Right.
on one of these dates. And so anyway, I didn't even turn an eye to him because I'm like, okay.
Well, he's got somebody with him.
They're just introducing me to
Right,
people,
right.
both of them. And so anyway, all of a sudden, again, you remember this, Lord put him on my doorsteps. I don't know. I've just come in. I'm still living in the trailer. The backfield is a hay field. They were hauling hay. Well, lo and behold, here comes Richard to the doorstep. Hey, Dara said, can you come help them? That we're throwing the hay up if y'all can help stack. I'm like, okay, sure. Not thinking it. I go back there, and now we're doing this together. And the whole time we're doing this, the girl that he was seeing was telling all of the ladies about marriage and house building. So again, I'm like, I don't know either one of y'all. So, nothing was,
there was none of that.
It wasn't nothing to me. A few months passed by, and then I run into just the guys, and one of them says, hey, he's interested in you. I said, yeah, right. No. And of course, he calls me, he says, he's talking to him. I said, well, what? No, I don't trust you. That's what I remember telling him. I said, I don't trust you. What? Where's your girlfriend? Aren't y'all getting married? And he said, what are you talking about? I'm not with you. I said, oh, yeah, you are. Because I see the part I heard,
right?
The girl part, And he tried his hardest to convince me. And I'm like, dude, I don't trust you. But in that same conversation, he asked me, because I don't know what he's going through.
Right.
Okay? He said, should I get a single wide or a double wide? And I remember looking at him going, I don't care. It's
whatever you want to live in.
Whatever I'm not going to be living in it. It's whatever you want to be living in. Oh, but God brought that one back to me. So I remember he worked off, and so he'd call me, hey, can you go drain the pipes for me? He was just trying to do anything he could to get us talking.
Right. Yeah.
Because I was a cement wall around me that he had to get a jackhammer to crack because of what I had already been through.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so, but I'm so thankful he didn't give up. So thankful he didn't give up, because he is a jewel. But he with little things like, can you go drip my water or check this? I'm thinking, why are you not calling your buddies to do this?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
don't you have some friends?
Yeah. I mean, I really.
Right.
And he lived just right down the road. I'm like, I'm not going to go in. I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going in this man's house by myself. I don't even,
Right.
And he tells me where the key is. Well, I done get one. I said, yeah, one of y'all got to go with me, the girls.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not going in this man's house by myself. Well, long story short, now here we are. We end up, I remember him asking me out on a date. Well, one night we were eating, the group of us eating, and one of the girls said, so what's going on with you and Richard? Because I noticed we were all sitting at the table. That's when the Caboose was in Independence.
Yeah.
That's where we were.
It's a good steakhouse.
And it was a long table, and all the girls were at one end, or ladies, and the men were at the other end. And and we're sitting there, and and I noticed he was at the end, and he kept, every time I look up, I just was getting weird feelings. And this one girl says, so what's going on with you and Richard? And I'm like, nothing. What are you talking about? To which immediately she starts jumping, because all the other girls are kicking, ladies are kicking them under the table, like, shut up, shut up. That's when it clicked. I said, I got y'all. Y'all were trying to set us up.
Yeah.
And so anyway, long story short, when God told me that was the right person, because we're talking to each other, and I'm thinking, okay, Lord, I'm starting to get feelings for this person, but I don't want to have these feelings.
Yeah.
I really had,
like, two's enough, God.
Yeah,
like,
I'm done.
Yeah.
When I told you I was done, it was me and you. I said, I don't want these feelings, and anyway, I remember having a dream, and I was sitting in a vehicle right in front of where I was living. I saw we pulled up to the trailer, I didn't know it was me. I didn't see the other person, but I'm pulled up, and I see these two hands do this. They didn't do this. They interlocked fist. And I thought, and I woke up. thought, well, that was weird. No, that was God, because Richard and I had gone out to eat or something, and we came home, and he was dropping me off. And when we pulled up, we're sitting there. He reached over and he got my hand. And when he did that,
come on, Jesus.
Immediately I remembered that dream.
Wow.
And when I tell you, I yanked my hand and I said, why did you do that? He says, I just was going to hold your hand. I just wanted to hold your hand. But why did you? And I'm like, why did you have to hold it like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he didn't know about the dream.
Right.
And I thought, oh, Lord, what are you telling me? And so I fought not only God, but I fought Richard the whole time. I'm like, no, I don't,
Right.
And no, that's been the best thing. I remember Jeremy was, at this point, Kelly's getting married. Richard helped me through all that because he kept me grounded. He said, stick to your list, keep going by your list,
Right.
And this was as friends.
Right.
Something would break or whatever. He'd always help me.
Yeah.
And
it's always in friends you got to watch out for.
Yeah, it's in friends. It's in friends.
Helping you do things.
But it came time that Kelly's married. Oh, God. And Ricky was in boot camp, I think, during that process of that year. And he's going through his thing. Well, it was Jeremy. Let me back up. It was not Ricky that left. It was Jeremy that left for boot camp. Kelly got married on a Friday. That Saturday, Richard drove me and Jeremy over on the other side of the river to the base to send Jeremy off to boot camp. I was so tied up with wedding. I didn't prepare myself for that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. So I remember that was tough. That was tough, but God took care. And so when Jeremy's in boot camp, Richard's helping me through all this. Well, Jeremy goes to graduate. Well, he's in Norfolk, Virginia. Well, I'm planning, okay, I've got to get up there and see him graduate and all this. And Richard's like, well, I remember we were eating. I had never had Red Lobster. We're at a Red Lobster. We're eating. And he says, okay, I know you're planning that trip. You're planning to go see Jeremy. He said, I thought I might go with you. He said, and then we'll find a lighthouse and get married. And I'm like, no, that's how he proposed to me.
I love it, though.
And I'm like, huh? I was not expecting it.
Yeah.
That was the least I expected. The reason the lighthouse, God told me in the beginning of all this turmoil from husband one, God always told me, keep your eyes on me. Keep your eyes on the light. Keep your eyes on me. And I remember, I don't know if it was a movie, if it was a book, I don't remember. And it had a lighthouse in it. And I saw how those ships could be on those rocky seas and in those storms. But as long as they could see that light, it could guide them where they needed to go.
That's good.
And so God was my lighthouse. He was that light. And I knew no matter what life threw at me, I was going to be okay.
Wow.
I didn't know the end.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
And did. And he knew the steps. Even though I didn't always make the right choices.
Yeah.
I didn't always do the right thing. He still cared. He was still there.
Yeah.
Still there. And orchestrating when they say he knows your whole story from the beginning to end. We might make detours.
Right.
But he makes it right.
And he's got a path. He's got a place for us.
He's got it. And so that's the reason for the lighthouse.
I love it.
And so that's what we did.
Beautiful.
His mom helped me she didn't know it because we didn't tell anybody. We didn't even buy rings here. And at that point, I'm like, I just want a golden band. I don't want all that fancy stuff.
Yeah.
It's more important to me, the commitment. And so we didn't even buy wedding bands here in town because my sister worked at the jewelry store, and he says we weren't going to tell anyone. We told our children.
Right.
We talked to our kids. just to make sure, hey guys, we're thinking this, and they were all like, fine, So what we were going to do was, once we got married, we were going to send, a postcard with us from Mr. and Mrs. And that's how we, we're going to let our families know. But his mom, actually, that's when internet, I-55, that dial-up internet.
You've got mail.
She loved exploring and looking on the internet. So when I was telling her that we were going to visit, didn't tell her why. So we're going to be visiting some lighthouses while we're up there in that area. She actually is the one that found the lighthouse.
That's
she
so
pulled up,
cool.
oh, look, I found this one, this one, this one, this
without
one.
Even knowing. That's really cool.
Without knowing. And I said, oh, print that out. Let me see. And I contacted a chapel up there, and the little man, he I can get y'all married. He said, but I usually have my couples meet with me for counseling prior, because I take it pretty serious. I said, we don't mind doing that. I said, but actually, and so we were at a church. We were still, Richard and I together would go. And I told, when he was home, because he worked offshore, but I told the little chapel guy, I said, we're actually going to meet with a pastor before we come on our trip. So he was like, oh, well, if you're, so then he realized we were serious,
right,
so he's like, well, maybe we don't have to do that if you're going to go ahead and meet, you know. And so that's what we did. We went up, and Jeremy graduated, and we visit with him a little bit. And that's actually where we bought the rings, was in while we were up there by him. And then we went out to the Outer Banks of North Carolina and got married. And they gave us, actually, it was a touring lighthouse, but they closed it down for the day, gave it to us for the day.
Wow.
And, just had a really, that was such a wonderful day. And I knew, and what we did, now this was God. He's so sweet. We got to the church, and we could hear a piano playing. And we walked in, and there was a little girl. She was there. Her aunt had her there, but the piano teacher was there. She was taking a lesson. And so he said, they'll be finished in a little bit, then we can get the ceremony started. Because it was just Richard and I. And we're like, okay. So Richard set up a tripod. He was going to video it so he could show when we got home. And we, and just to have it. And so the little girl ended up playing the wedding march for me.
Oh, sweet.
So it was, I said, well, that was God, having her there at that time. And so, I mean, he was still, the little details.
Yeah, I love that God's in the small details.
Those small little details.
Just as you've just taught, just those small little moments with the Lord. And
things that He cares about, And so we come home, and his mama had taken sick while we were gone. And we come home to her. She was in bed. She wasn't feeling good, which is not like her at all. And so we come in, and Richard had the video and camera on. He says, hey, Mom, Dad, we got to show y'all something. So his brother was over there. I think his sister might have been. I'm not for sure, but I know it was a couple of them over there. And I'm standing by his mom, and we start playing it on the TV so she can see. And she's like, what is this? And then when she hears the wedding march and she sees, and she just starts crying. And she grabbed my hand, and she said, thank you. And I said, well, it was Richard's idea, to video.
Right.
And all. She said, no. Now this was the part that I knew some, but not all of it. She said, thank you for bringing me my son back. And for she said, you are, what did she say? She told me that I was the dove of peace. That I had brought peace to her. And I remember looking at her, I said, I'm just me. I haven't done anything. I'm not anything special. She said, and that's what's good. You'd have no idea,
I love that, though. It's beautiful, like thinking back to the mom milking a cow, right? the mom working the 5-6 jobs just to make ends meet, putting up with some of the things that you didn't necessarily need to, and to sit. There's an old song, I think, when I survey the wondrous cross, right? When I survey what the Lord has done and survey the goodness of God that you sit in. how do you deny the goodness of God, right? How do you deny that he's been with you all along, that he's had a plan? And even Mr. Richard, when you guys weren't even together, God was working things in his life and working things in your life to bring them together and make this beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And
he did. That's exactly.
And man, like Mr. Richard is sweet. Like he's just like grandpa. He's just like that pawpaw. You know what I'm saying? Like there's just this sweetness that just rolls off of both of you and on your kids and your grandkids. And from the moment you drive onto your property and through that gate, there's just this beauty in the beyond the woods and the creation. There's just this beauty and the glory of the Lord that rests in here.
And it's God.
And in
it's
this
not
place.
us, it's God. But Richard's kind of that person. When E.F. Hutton speaks, everyone listens.
Yeah, right.
Richard, I will blah, 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 blah. I'm blabbermouth.
Yeah.
But Richard is not. He sits and ponders and thinks. And sometimes I just want to pull it out of him.
You're shaking.
But when he says and speaks,
yeah,
it's volume.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I thank God for that.
Yeah.
You know, he balances me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I balance him out.
No,
but I know
y'all do. I don't want to, we don't have to talk long, but I do want to talk a little bit. Can you just give us maybe a shorter version when we'll do another video at some time, a shorter version of what happened to you guys at the tent?
Wow. Okay. At the tent, Richard, when it first started, we didn't know anything about it. Richard and I were with his first cousins in Kentucky at the Ark Encounter Museum. And we were a few days left to go, and I get a phone call from a granddaughter. And she's, Granny, you have to come home. You have to come home. You have to listen to this man. I've gotten saved, Granny. Da, da, da. And I'm just like, oh, what? And of course, she was my prodigal. She's my baby.
Yeah,
I
her
prayed.
testimony. We will tell that testimony one day. I promise.
And well, God gave me a promise on that one too. He told me that one day in church, give her to me, let me have her. You know, basically I was in his way trying to do it myself.
We do that. We're good at that.
But he gave me that promise and I said, okay. And every so often I'd have to say, Lord, you remember that? You know, like I had to remind him. But at the tent, that's what got us. It wasn't at the tent then. It was at the church. And we immediately, Richard said, he told his family, we're cutting it sharp. We're heading home. And we headed home that next morning early. And we were at service with her that night. Right.
And for those of you watching that don't know what we're talking about, maybe this is your first time watching God's Coffee Call, because we've talked about the tent a couple of times. A simple little week-long revival at a local little Baptist church. They just, doing what they always do. And God showed up in our town.
Big time.
11 months. 11 months changed thousands of lives.
Yes, it did.
And so that's what we're talking about at the tent. We call it the tent.
Yeah, we call it the tent.
But it started at the church and it grew so big we had to go to like a circus tent.
So we went. And every night after that, we went. And then when it outgrew the church real fast, they put the tent up. Well, we were right there. Richard wanted to help. I'm doing whatever. And we're there putting the tent up, getting it started. And then next thing we know, Madison is asked to give her testimony. And at this point, that's whenever, I'm having to deal with my own battles because I wasn't a drinker. It didn't taste good. It's nasty.
Right, yeah.
I tried, but it just never appealed to me. Richard did. He liked it. And hardcore, like rum, and they'd make moonshine and it was hardcore stuff.
Wow.
And I remember my niece, I thought, God, what kind of testimony, and that bothered me.
Yeah.
But I'm not to say anything to him, and my niece says, Aunt Johnette, that's his battle with him and God.
Yeah.
And so at that point I thought, okay, but it still ate at me because it's in my house, it was just something we never did. But anyway, knowing that little bit of history, at the Blue Tent, when Madison gave her testimony, I didn't know how that had triggered Richard. We were all there supporting her and everything. Well, it wasn't long after that. she and I went to get groceries. And when we came home, now again, Richard's not saying anything about anything. You know, we're just going and really learning.
Yeah.
We come in putting groceries away, and I noticed in one little area in my pantry, it was empty. And I thought, oh, wait, what was there? You know, in my head,
Yeah.
what was there? And I realized it was a couple bottles of wine. I thought, where did the wine go? Who drank? You know, I'm thinking, oh,
Where'd
God,
the wine go?
Where'd the wine go? Oh, Lord. And then, I don't know, something told me, look at the cabinet over the refrigerator, because that's where he kept everything, like it was full. It was empty. Now, I'm still not saying anything to Madison, because I'm going, what's
Right.
going on?
Yeah.
You know, because he's not said anything to me.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I said, Madison, look. And she said, you know, she's like, what, Grant? You know.
Yeah.
And I looked in here. Richard was in his recliner like nothing, you know, and I thought, I don't know what's going on.
Nothing's going on here, guys. Nothing to see.
What's going on? Wow, okay. And I didn't know. I said, do I say something to him? Do I ask him? Nope. I'm going to let him.
Right.
And then the next day, we have a family group text, and he sent a picture of the side-by-side, full, and he, with his sweet little telling us, you know, that how God had touched his life and all. But what triggered that was him hearing Madison's testimony, and later that's when he told me.
You skipped over that. A side-by-side.
A side-by-side.
The back of a side-by-side. Full of it. I remember the day they posted that picture on Facebook, and I didn't know you guys. I had heard about this girl, Madison. I had heard about her and her testimony, and God's doing radical things in her family, but I didn't know who you were. And when I saw that picture, I'm like, Lord God, you're really doing
He was
this
doing
is big stuff you're doing, because it wasn't just like a little case of beer. It was like a side-by-side full. And I'm like, okay, this is beautiful.
But what he told me, he said, listening to Madison's testimony and talking about her when she'd go and drink.
Yeah.
And he said, that's what he told me. He said, how much of that did I influence?
Mm.
You know, and
Come
so
on.
that just the Holy Spirit just
Jesus.
went from there. And, you know, our whole family's been different. Since
Yeah.
Ricky and Stacy have gotten so close and growing in their walk with the Lord, and
I love them.
just
They're
stepping
amazing.
stepping up to the plate. And yeah.
Awesome. Madison gave her testimony on God's Coffee Call on our Facebook page, has her own little butter knife t-shirt out there.
Yes,
like
she
just
does.
came and just like dropped the word.
Yes,
and just,
she does.
Yeah, it's been beautiful just to see your family grow in the Lord. And I get to see you guys a lot because you go to my brother's church. So I get to see you guys
know.
time and hear things. And it's just beautiful
Well, thank you.
just to watch. And this is why I wanted to sit down. I'm like, I know she's got a story to tell. And I didn't know, like, for you guys watching, I didn't know any of this story. And she's like, you sure you want me to do it? I got a long time. And as you can tell, if you've watched the whole thing, the lighting has changed. Like, it is dark.
dark.
It was the middle of the afternoon, but it's been beautiful. Just a conversation. And that's what I want this place to be, is let's just sit and have conversation. Let's talk about our life, because I've not walked through some of the things. I've not walked through hardly any of the things you've walked through, but who's to say whoever's watching that hasn't walked through that divorce, hasn't walked through that abuse, hasn't walked through some of the trauma and the decisions of being a single mom and making it work and remarrying and just all these things that you've had an encounter with the Lord. That's why I want to have this conversation, because, the Bible says that you're a hand and I'm a foot and a knuckle and an ear. And when we come together and we express the goodness of God and tell our stories, how much influence we can have to express the glory of God to creation, to those who have ears to hear. And it's just a beautiful thing when I get to sit and hear people's encounter with the Lord and how good he is. So thank you so much for being willing to sit with us. Thank you so much for coming and allowing us to come into your home.
My biggest thing out of everything is don't lose hope.
Yeah.
I was so many times so discouraged, and so wanting to just throw in the towel.
Yeah.
And the enemy will tell you that.
Yeah. Throw it in. It's not
just
worth it.
throw it in, get ready, just end it. But no, God's got a better plan, and just don't ever think there's no hope.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing.
Well,
I
that's
think.
beautiful. All right, we're going to end really quick because you were prepared for this. Because you told me, who do you want to talk to when you get to heaven? You said I'd be shocked.
Oh, you will be.
Okay.
Zacchaeus.
Why Zacchaeus?
As a child, I remember this little song. He's a wee little man. And I always imaged even though he was wee and small, God still saw him.
Yeah.
God still took time for him. So even in ours, we don't have to be big, important thing.
Yeah.
God took, just for the weeness, the littleness,
I
even
love
the
it.
little. So it's like, I'm nothing.
Yeah.
But he took time for me.
That's beautiful. No, it's beautiful. I was half expecting you to say Judas. Like, I don't know why. I was like, she's going to say Judas or something.
No.
But I mean, seriously, like, that's beautiful. Like, Zacchaeus, not only did Jesus take time to see him, but he took time to see him and call him.
Yes. Call him
and
by
say,
name.
hey, I want to intentionally spend time with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's beautiful.
Now, he's done that with me.
Yeah.
I really feel that. So.
Do you have a favorite Bible verse?
Thought about that one too. I believe it's Luke 7, I believe it is. I'd have to know the exact, but it's the alabaster box.
Beautiful.
Breaking it and pouring out all you got.
Yeah.
Because that's what I had to do.
Yeah. And it's beautiful.
And in all the brokenness, you just pour it out. Cry on him and it just love him. I still love him because he loved me.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to share too, and I just thought about it and say in the brokenness, in all the conferences and women's conferences, because I did a lot of women of faith conferences and stuff with different ladies. One of the speakers said that, and I just related to it on the brokenness. When you look at a stained glass window, and they're usually beautiful,
right?
It's made of broken
glass. Yeah.
And so God takes all that brokenness that we've got and he forms it like the potter's hand,
right?
But he forms it into something beautiful. And I thought, okay, Lord, well, you got a lot of broken pieces on my hand, but I know, I'm nothing special,
right?
But I know I'm beautiful to him.
Yeah. I heard somebody just this past year talking about the alabaster box and brokenness, and they talked about that one of the last acts of worship done before Jesus' death was the alabaster box, and that perfume filled the house, but not just filled the house because she bathed Jesus in it. When he was at the Garden of Gethsemane, you could smell the perfume. When they arrested him, you could still smell the perfume of her praise. When they beat him, that whip released the perfume of her praise. On the cross, in the burial, in the resurrection, the brokenness of her praise and adoration was still, you could still smell it all over her. And I'm like, man, I just want to be a fragrance brokenness over Jesus.
There was one song too I remember singing, we bring the sacrifice of praise unto the house of the Lord. Thinking, Lord, so many times it was a sacrifice to praise you, because that was the last thing that I felt like doing, but I knew you had me. Yeah. And I had to praise you.
Right.
So that's it.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, man. Gosh, it was so good. I could talk for hours, but we're not going to do that. We will schedule another podcast for sure. Thank you guys so much for coming in here, being with us. Thank you, Ms Johnette, for just sharing your story and sharing your heart. Truly a woman after the heart of God, and beautiful in spirit and in truth, in physical and in your spirit. Just there's a beauty in the glory of the Lord. And I wrote about you in my book, and in my book I asked her some things, and you told me in your book that you always thought that you weren't anything special and that you were worthless. And to sit and listen to your story, I'm like, gosh, so worthy. So beautiful and full of value. And the Lord made sure to position himself in your life
and he did.
Throughout all of it to expose it. And so Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining us here for another episode at God's Coffee Call. I pray that this episode has blessed you. It has ministered to you in some way. Again, please like, subscribe, comment below, share this on your social media. We want to hear your story, and hopefully some of you can relate. I'm sure there's somebody out there that could totally relate to Ms Johnette. Again, thank you so much. Until next time, I pray. Let me grab my coffee cup like we always do. I pray that your coffee is strong and that your heart is full, and that you experience the little miracles of the Lord all the days of your life. Until next episode, I'll see you later. Bye.